Hi, I'm Tim of the Watchbox, and this one is going to be just for fun. I'm happy to have on hand the 2020 50-piece limited edition stainless steel Schwarz Etienne Roma Synergy by Kari Voutilainen. Now, this watch, made in two flights, one with silver dial and one with blue dial, is a collaboration between Schwarz Etienne of La Chaux-de-Fonds and Kari Voutilainen, AHCI master and one of the great independents of our time. The watch combines both their philosophies as well as quite a bit of horologically interesting engineering. So let's start with the basics. So this is part of the Schwarz Etienne Roma line, which is a constant in the catalog. You can see that the custom elements include the dial by Complement Cadran, which is Kari Voutilainen's dial company, and then on the reverse side, extensive reworking of the manufactured caliber ASC 200. But let's start with our basics, most notably how big it is and how it wears. So throwing this watch on the wrist, you can see 39 millimeters in diameter. It's a very wearable size, 11.3 millimeters thick. It's 44.8 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip with a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. That means it is a great unisex option and wears very traditionally for those who have a taste in discretion, traditional sizes, or classical dress watch design. This watch should satisfy just about everyone. Now, the timepiece would wear well on a wrist as small, in my estimation, as 13 centimeters circumference, and it really is quite impressive just how much is packed into the case. We'll get a sense of that in just a moment. As you can see, the watch fits comfortably, the lugs are nowhere near the edge of my wrist, and it's thin enough to easily slide underneath a dress cuff. Taking a quick look at the hardware and the software, as I like to say here, you can see a simple gray-blue, it's really slate gray, calfskin with bolstering to add some thickness and volume, a folded edge. You can see a monotone stitch. Then on the underside, you can see a more naturally colored calfskin. And of course, you get a full deploying clasp. Now, I should mention this watch with a retail price of around $27,000 to $30,000. It is a substantial watch, and you're getting a high horology timepiece. So keep in mind, the standard Roma is considerably less expensive, and it will be mechanically identical. It will not have the special Voutilainen elements. Here you can see twin trigger deployment for the clasp, and it is a double fold deployment, protection against accidentally dropping your watch while donning or removing at bedside. The case is graceful. As you can see, there are a couple of thoughtful elements, including the rounded case flank, the gadroon-style dome of the outer bezel, and then the flat conical plane of the primary bezel. You can see that the bezel is actually stacked somewhat pagoda fashion with the gadroon and then the step of the bezel leading up to the crystal, so there are tiers in effect that break up the visual mass of the flank of the case. You can also see that in classical fashion, the lugs break sharply with the case band, and then there's a little bit of a fluting in the lug profile to make it appear a little bit more delicate and elegant. Schwarz Etienne logo on the crown, which is a simple push-down knurled affair, and the watch is 50 meters water resistant, surprising for a dress watch, which will usually be 20 to 30. Now, the dial is made of solid sterling silver, and of course, it is by Kari Voutilainen, and you are told so at the base of the small second. We have two different shades of blue, a lighter sort of blue-gray or slate blue to match the strap at center, and then a little bit more of a cobalt metallic for the outer track. Now, you can see outboard there's a railroad track for reading the minutes, and then inboard of that we have what Schwarz Etienne describes as soleil or sunburst guilloché, and then all applique, tri-Arabic numerals, and indices. The font is specific to the model. You can see there are lovely delta faceted hands at center, the faceting improving the contrast, and inboard of that soleil pattern we have a center known as écaille de poisson, which is the scale of fish. So we have this lovely radiating fish scale, almost a little bit like a grand orge or barleycorn, but it's got a more of an oblong profile to the individual scales. We have a recessed subdial that has its own little railroad track for reading the seconds, and then what's called a vague or wave style pattern. Turn it all over, and it's just as interesting on the reverse side. As you can see, individually numbered, 50 meters water resistant stainless steel. You're not paying for precious metal here. You're getting a fascinating movement. Schwarz Etienne makes some of the most interesting in-house calibers in the business, and they're making the tough parts too, like the balance wheel, not just the bridges and plates. We have a unique jeweled staff micro rotor that is super silent. Jeweled staff systems are a little bit more antiquated in design, but unlike bearing designs, they are absolutely silent and wobble free, so there's refinement there. The mechanics are all Schwarz Etienne, which means 198 parts, 33 joules, a 21.6 beat rate, hacking second, micro rotor automatic, 1 barrel, 86-hour power reserve, and technically it is a very accomplished caliber, as packing 86 hours of reserve into a movement this size is no mean feat. You can also see that thanks to the micro rotor, everything is visible. A conventional automatic system has both a rotor and a winding bridge, which tends to block most of the view. You can also see that the guilloché pattern across the bridges is extraordinary. Now, it's a sunburst that sort of radiates out from an imaginary center point atop the balance staff. Kari Voutilainen's atelier completed this engine turning, which means, like the dial, it has his signature to it. It's not just his prescribed style, it is actually his atelier's own work. Some of the special elements that set this apart from a standard ASC 200 include the engine turning across the bridges and the dramatic solarization of the ratchet wheel. You can also see that the click and the click spring, along with all the screw heads, entirely black polished, and that's finished off with a diamond paste to create that exceptional mirrored surface, also known as poly noir or specular finish. And you can see why it's called black polish, because at almost every angle it does not reflect light, it turns black. You can also see that there was beveling done by hand on the edge of the bridges. It's particularly bright and mirrored. Now, I'm under no illusions. I believe that this was started mechanically but then finished off by hand, but that again is really the high horology standard these days, as even Patek Philippe starts bridges mechanically and then finishes them by hand. There is a solid gold placard that has been applied, Schwarz Etienne by Voutilainen, and that is true 18-karat rose gold satin, finished on its top, beveled on its edge, fixed by black polished screws. You can see there is engine turning on the base plate, and there are different patterns, as we have that sunburst rayonné pattern, but then we also have this wonderful sharp diamond pattern splayed out on top of the balance cock itself. So there's a lot of handsome detailing here. One of my favorite details is the concave mirrored profile inboard of the solarization of the ratchet wheel. There is a lot to love right here. And you can see, of course, the dial is both an homage to Voutilainen's established work, and if you squint a little bit, also a bit of a nod and a wink to the Philippe Dufour simplicity. So there is a lot to love about this watch. Reach out to me, Team Mosso, at thewatchbox.com if you are interested in watches like this.